as mathematicians, we can undo numbers. Did you know that? Yeah, we can undo numbers. Okay? So, like, let's take the number 3, for example. How do I undo 3? How'd you get that? Because you're absolutely correct, Manny, but how'd you get that? How would you undo? That's like if you have $3, somebody gave you $3, you would undo it by taking it away. So, another word for undo? Inverse. Opposite. Undo. Right? Okay. So, let's talk about it. What's the inverse of 3? If I add those together, you just gave me the inverse property of addition, also known as the additive inverse. Some of you guys used that on your assessment last Friday. Do I need to move you? Do I need to move you? Okay. That's 1. I'm not giving you any more. Okay. So on Friday, some of you used additive inverse instead of inverse property of addition. Are they the same? Yes. Yes. Also known as, I'll just write it up here, additive inverse. These are the same properties. Okay? How would you undo? So,
Normal 5.
a normal 5. What's a normal 5?
Just a 5 without negative.
So we would just call that a
5.
beautiful. So what's the inverse of negative 5?
Negative 5.
And if I added them together, you are saying that if you take any number as a mathematician and you undo it, or you give me the inverse of that number, you will always get 0. That is the inverse property of addition. Easy? I'm going to try and trick you. Ready for this? You're up, Dion. That's a t. What's the inverse of t? How do you undo that t?
Negative t.
Do you agree with him?
Yes.
No?
No, I understand.
Do you agree with Dion? Negative t?
Yeah.
No,
Why not?
because t is not a number.
I disagree. What if I said t equals 1? Yes, letters are called variables. Those variables are numbers.
Like 2-step equation.
Kind of, yeah. So, yeah, Dion, you are correct. So, what is the inverse of t?
Negative t.
So, if I added,
0.
yeah, of course. What if I gave you $3, then you took away $3? How much money would I have?
0.
Yeah. What if I owed you $5, but then I gave you $5? Would I still owe you any money?
No.
Nope. Okay. How about this?
X.
Oh.
Negative x. No, positive x.
No, x.
What's the inverse of negative x? X. And the inverse property of addition says if I add the inverse of a negative,
Get 0.
you get 0. Or if I add the inverse of a positive, you still get
0.
You guys are catching on quick. You've just given me the inverse property of addition. So if you just think inverse means opposite. Well, what's the opposite of a positive?
Negative.
What's the opposite of a negative?
Positive.
You would know that property right off the bat, right? And we use this in, what do we do on our do now? Be specific. Two-step equations. Number 1, two-step equations. You guys were already using this inverse property of addition, right? And you didn't even know it, right? Yeah? Okay, questions on this? No? Okay. Uh-oh, inverse property of multiplication. Uh-oh. Let's talk about it. What if I gave you the number 2? What would its multiplicative inverse be? What would well, remember we're talking about this operation. So we're talking about multiplying. What would I multiply 2 by? We're thinking of inverse, right? Can Keep giving me your thoughts. I want to hear what you Negative 2. You're right. The opposite of a positive 2, the inverse of 2 is negative 2. But now we're multiplying. We are not adding because we're talking about the multiplicative inverse. We did it on number 2. Negative 1. Can I turn 2 into a fraction?
Yes, put a 1 over.
Excellent. Manny, you're on top of things today. Okay? What would be the inverse?
Oh, 50.
How do you know that? And what do we call that? Oh my gosh, we just talked about number 2. When we were dividing those fractions, what did we do? Reciprocal. There you go. Okay, I hear. Okay, so the minute I turned that whole number into a fraction, all the 3 of you were like, oh yeah, I know what to do. Okay, when I take that away. So you can always turn a whole number into a fraction, right? Always. Okay, so what's the inverse of 2 or 2 over 1? Let's see.
2 over 2 equals 1.
Okay, you're using the reciprocal. And that inverse property of multiplication says if you take a number and you multiply it by its reciprocal or its inverse, you will always get. With the additive inverse, we always got 0. Ah, okay.